Torchwood, Jennifer Wilde, as I said, Cancer Town. He also hasn't paid me, but he wanted me to mention he's also an app developer. He developed a very funny and silly app for Android and I think Apple called Magic Mike, based on the movie. So he's doing pretty well. He got the franchise to do the app for that movie. So if you're into male strippers and trying to make them drop their clothes by shaking your tablet around, that's the app to download. It actually is very good fun. It's very, very silly. And he's very talented. He did Fake Safari.
Okay,
but he's worked with Malconi, who obviously people might know him from Forbidden Planet, but also a writer and an artist in his own right. I mean, he created the Magdalene for the Darkness series from Top Cow, and they've worked together on something called No or Now, The Savage Boy. Looks really, really good from what I've seen of it. Other Irish comics, and I love this, and I have got a penchant for zombies, but Zombie High, it's up to issue 7 or 8 at the moment. It's up to, issue 8 will be out soon from Uproar Comics up in Derry. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. It's actually, I don't know, I'm not going to say it beats Walking Dead because Walking Dead's got the legacy, but each issue is as good as a Walking Dead issue. So that's high praise because Walking Dead is one of my favorite series. Declan Shelby, another local boy who's making good, comes from Thunderbolts for Marvel straight onto Venom, and quite a few other covers. And obviously, the man himself, Will Sliney, with not only MacGyver, one of the greatest characters and now comic book characters ever, but he's doing the Cahulian series. And what I am really looking forward to next year, Fearless Defenders. I think the only two comics I'm looking forward to from Marvel now is Fearless Defenders from Will Sliney and possibly Superior Spider-Man.
Well, I know Will's actually listening tonight because he was on Facebook there earlier on, so I'm sure he'd be glad to hear that he's made your top 5.
I think he knows. Well, if he doesn't, he should know. I mean, I joke with him a lot about, that I'm only doing this because he's going to send me stuff. Well, he can send me stuff if he wants. He is so talented. I mean, the Fearless Defenders have stoked my love of fun comics again. I am so looking forward to that one comic. But yes, I think that's enough groveling. He'll be sending me loads of comics in the post.
Yes, come on, spring in your step, Jay.
Yes, number 4. Again, it's another independent, actually. Well, as independent if it's not Marvel or DC. Today is would have been Tolkien's birthday if he was still alive. And my number 4 is a comic called Saga, from Brian K. Vaughan. And the artist is called Fiona Staples. It's really hard to describe. It's like a space opera. It's almost like Guardians of the Galaxy and Green Lantern core, but it's not quite. It's more like that if it met Lord of the Rings, in a way. It's just that the characters, the personalities, the storyline, the love story, it basically is a love story. So Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Romeo and Juliet, all in one place. And it's really, really good.
Okay. Moving on.
Number 2. Now, I will be honest, my top 3 have changed. When did you send? We talked about this last week, didn't we? We were going to do top 10s.
Yes.
So my top 3 has changed probably every day. And it's changed 3 times in the last few hours. But number 2 is from DC. It was going to be the Animal Man run, but I've narrowed it down to, it's a crossover that Jeff Lemire kind of wrote and headed up called Rot World. It was a storyline crossing over from Animal Man, Swamp Thing, and Frankenstein. The New 52 has been hit and miss for me, but when they do it right, they do it really right. And the dark kind of side of things, like Justice League Dark, Animal Man, Swamp Thing, Frankenstein, has been stunningly good. And issue 12, 13, 14, I think possibly 15 of Animal Man and Swamp Thing and 3 issues of Frankenstein do this massive crossover showing what would happen in the future if nature, animals, and the Rot all fought and the Rot won. And it's just, there is something about Jeff Lemire's writing. It is stunningly good, dark characters. So that is my number 3.
Okay.
Number 2 is something that we've talked about a couple of times. I don't think you've read it yet. And we're going to get the artist on early this year, David Aja. It's the new Hawkeye series from Marvel.
No, I haven't read it though. I've heard amazing things about it.
It is. Do you know what? It's beyond. I'll say this right now. That when I get to number 1, you'll see why it's number 1. If it was any other month, Hawkeye would be number 1. It's so far above anything else. So far. In a way, it's not a superhero. It's more about Clint Barton living in Brooklyn and what he does when he's not in costume. It's brilliant narration, brilliant scripting. The art is so low-key that it just sells itself. It's kind of subversive. It just, you know what? It's like Clint Barton basically telling people how not to be a superhero. and it's old school kind of line work rather than really fine detailed. It's just grizzled. It's just really, I don't know. It's really good. Look, there's issue 3 or 6. I'm just trying to remember which one issue. I think it was issue 6. Tony Stark guest stars. Any other comic, that would be a team up with Iron Man and Hawkeye beating up bad guys and everything else. There's 3 or 4 pages of Tony Stark setting up Clint Barton's DVD player. The most intelligent man in the world and one of the least intelligent men, just so he could watch a cop show. But that storyline is brilliant. There's another one, I think it might be issue 3, where he forgets to label what his special arrows are. So when he's chasing down some bad guys, he's pulling arrows by random arrows out of his quiver and not knowing what they're going to do. But it's just good. People need to read Hawkeye, and when we get David Arger on, he's going to have to send me free stuff because I want to own his artwork.
Jay, you're doing some pimp in the night, right? Number one. Now look, anyone who's read this or anyone who's even heard about it probably knows what's coming. I don't read as much Spider-Man as I used to, but I have been, dipping in and out. And recently, people may have heard that Amazing Spider-Man 700 hit the shelves as 5-6 days ago. Yeah, just after Christmas, can't remember. And Dan Slott, the writer. Now I'll start with the bad stuff. He's gone off Twitter for a while. He's on holiday because he got death threats, he got abuse. It's got really, really nasty just from this one issue. For the last few issues. Now, bear in mind, Dan Slott's been writing Spidey for over 100 issues. He knows what he's doing. But there was and again, if it's spoilers, turn your ears off, I don't really care. Peter Parker and his long time adversary, one of the biggest villains in the Spider-Man mythos, Dr. Octopus. They switched bodies. Doc Ock was in a failing body, he was ill, old, dying, switched his brain or his mind into Spider-Man's and vice versa. And the last few issues have seen, this going backwards and forwards. And issue 700, basically it was a back and forth battle. It showed Parker outwitting Ock, Ock outwitting Parker, each of them getting closer and closer until the very end, moments from death, Parker got the device back onto his own body, was hoping to switch his mind, but it didn't work. Because Octavius knew this was coming, put an armor up around his head, and it didn't work. So all Peter Parker could do, all he was left with was one thing. He tried to kill Spider-Man's body, his own body. Threw himself out of a window. So he crossed the line he said he would never do. He deliberately tried to kill someone. And again, this failed, unfortunately. All the way through, I thought it was going to be a normal comic book where good guy wins, bad guy loses. It wasn't. Right at the end, in his dying moments, in Spider-Man, as in Peter Parker's dying moments, he basically uses the mind link to make Dr. Ock see himself as Peter Parker all through childhood. So every good thing that Parker and Spider-Man did, Octavius saw himself do. So he kind of became the hero, in a way. But ultimately, at the end of issue 700, Peter Parker, as we know him, is dead. And Dr. Octopus, one of the biggest supervillains in Marvel, but definitely in Spider-Man, is now in Spider-Man's body. And he is Spider-Man for the foreseeable future. So as a cliffhanger goes, and even, the issue that comes after it, it's just one of those moments. It's different than killing someone off or, a couple of years ago when Brand New Day and One More Day where, the marriage between Peter Parker and Mary Jane was kind of wiped out of existence. All of this was big. This is bigger in a way because you've now got a villain inside a hero's body living his life with the hero's memories, with the hero's girlfriend, with the hero's family. And according to Dan Slott, this is going to be the status quo for the foreseeable future. Spider-Man is now a bad guy in Spider-Man's body. So it was just, I think the reason it's my number one is the fact, the death threats, the boycotts, the extreme reactions, and the fact that Slott went over the line. He did something that people didn't think would happen in a comic book. Everyone thinks a good guy wins. In this case, it didn't. This sort of brings you back to the whole death in the family thing, what was it, 15 years ago or so? Yeah, because I'd heard that was what happened. Now, to be honest with you, Christopher had reviewed it on his very spoilerific review on the page, and I'd heard that was what happened. But it's quite certainly a bold move.
It's very bold, and the fact that yes, nerds overreact sometimes, but casual fans, I think, are overreacting more. You don't give a guy death threats because he's done this to a comic, because no matter what Dan Slott says, and I have spoken to him about it via Twitter, but no matter what he says about it, this is it, Spider-Man's gone, he'll be back. There's already an out. Basically, the way the mind device worked, Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man's body has got every single memory Peter Parker ever had. In other words, get a good telepath, his mind's back if you really want to do it that way.
Yeah.
But now, you're going to see a Spider-Man who is trying to be a hero, because that's what Octopus now wants to do. He wants to be a hero, but he's still got the arrogance and the genius that Dr. Octopus had. So he's already making changes. He now wants to prove himself to be a better hero than the original Spider-Man, which I think would be really good from a character point of view and a story point of view. As I said, Fearless Defenders, I am definitely buying. From the new Spider-Man and Fearless Defenders are the only two books I'm really excited about coming forward.
Okay. Right. Now, have you done a quick list of things that you didn't like this year or things you're looking forward to for next year?
Well, those two are the things I'm looking forward to next year, obviously. I want to see the hype that is starting next year for all of the forthcoming superhero movies and all of the, like you and Owen were talking about, who's going to be doing what, which characters are in it. That's the bit I like looking forward to see where people are right and wrong. I'm going to be reading a lot more comics. From the bad things, there wasn't that many. There was some bad comics, but I think the proliferation of covers. I didn't like the amount of covers for Walking Dead. I hated the amount of covers for 52 different covers for New 52 at the end of the year. It was just too many things like that. Also, not giving comics. New 52 showed it. Some comics that were meant to be ongoing were relegated down to mini-series of 6 issues. Things like Direction Man, which was really, really good, was only selling right on the threshold, so they cancelled after 12 issues. But they keep bringing out, and no offense, but they keep bringing out a lot more Batman titles or Batman family titles. I just wish that they would give it a bit of a chance. I'm really looking forward to Image, Dark Horse as well, but Image Comics, they've got such a catalogue this year coming out. And obviously the Crow ongoing series.
Which is, because I know Paddy's been reading it and I'm hearing great things about it.
It's right back to what the Crow used to be.
Yeah.
You take these comic books, the old comic books from James O'Barr, and the first movie with Brandon Lee, it's perfect. Ignore everything else. Oh no, the TV series actually was very good as well. But ignore the other 7 movies. The only other, I suppose, the worst thing, well, it's not that bad, but it's pretty bad. Unfortunately, Peter David, he's a writer for Marvel, wrote X Factor, Hulk, She-Hulk, among many, many other comics. He had a stroke a couple of days ago, and he's not very... just in the middle of nowhere. Oh, actually, I posted it on the news, obviously. So there isn't too much of an update yet, but hopefully he'll be okay. But no, it's been a positive, optimistic year. I can't think of too many negatives. Obviously, from a comic book point of view, The Avengers was probably the biggest comic book event of the year. But I did touch on that because that's more movies. But, it's redefined in a way. It's put the bar so high for what the next superhero movie has to be, especially an ensemble one.
Yeah.
I think that you're going to see kind of what Iron Man did. The first Iron Man was stunning, second one was good, third one's going to be even better. And DC hasn't come up with anything to do that yet. Dark Knight was good, the Batman trilogy was good, but in a way Iron Man's better. Avengers is definitely better.
Okay.
So Justice League is going to have a long way to go.
Yeah. Big boots to fill, right? Now, comics in the sweeping top 10 that I have done, comics actually made it in 3 times. Which was quite, bearing in mind that I'm only really starting to get back into my comics again. The highest thing on the list has to be the Ghostbusters ongoing series with IDW.
Now, I was going to talk about that, but I know that was I knew that would be on yours because from what you've told me and the little I've seen, it is stunning and is true to what the Ghostbusters mythos should be.
Yeah. Because it came out in 2011, but we can cheat here in the UK because of that whole legal thing. We only got it really about halfway through this year when it was released in the graphic novels.
Yep, that counts.
So I thought, right, it's fair enough, we can use it in that. Now, I tweet Eric Burnham and David Schroning, the artist and the writer team. We're trying to get them on the show. The time difference is the problem, but we are definitely going to... I can't wait to get these guys on the show and just sit and talk Ghostbusters with them.
The Ghostbusters?
Yeah. Well, because I actually wanted to do it in December for the whole May and end of the world thing. I thought it'd be good to tie it in, but time schedule didn't work out. The thing about it is, this is the best Ghostbusters we have seen since 1984. I love the real Ghostbusters. I love Ghostbusters 2. This is the best Ghostbusters since 1984. It took a wee while to get used to the art because it is very stylish, but once you get used to it, it's 100%. It's great. Burnham's writing is really good as well, because I know you haven't read this yet, but I know you will. Saxon has my graphic novels at the minute. I'll give them whenever I get them back. Burnham has a habit of setting things up early on and maybe not coming back to it for 4 or 5 issues.
Yeah.
Completely forgetting about it, not even referencing it again, and then you're like, oh yes, I remember that.
That's how it should be done.
Yeah.
You know, he hints at things, and you know, it ties into the real Ghostbusters. It ties into Extreme Ghostbusters. It ties into comics that have gone before. It obviously ties into the movies. These guys really know their Ghostbusters mythology. It's amazing.